Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard to Dropkicks and Attractions here on the Dropkicks and Attractions Podcast Network. I'm learning English with a new mouth today. I am, of course, the Prince of Pop Culture and your nostalgia nincompoop. I still haven't decided on the nickname for that. Xander Invictus, and of course, I am joined by anime analyst, the Western Weeboo. I'm working on yours too, Big Boxer.
I'm doing great today, Xander. How about you?
I am doing fantastic. It is, of course, we are recording this the day before my birthday, and it is wet and crappy outside.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be out in this.
No, I'm not. I do want to go ahead and drop in some sad news today. Obviously, this happened a few days before the recording. The passing of Hall of Famer the Iron Sheik.
Rest in peace.
Absolutely. He was actually the precursor of Hulkamania. He is the one that Hulk Hogan beat for the world title in 1984.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And basically, he was a big part of that whole rock and wrestling, the first boom, I guess you would call it, pro wrestling on a national basis, WWF. He was in the Hulk Hogan rock and wrestling cartoon that I used to watch a lot as a kid. He was one of the bad guys. You saw him in the Goonies or Good Enough music video that Cyndi Lauper had done for the Goonies. It was actually a 2-part music video. And he was actually at the first WrestleMania. He was a part of the first ever title change at the first ever WrestleMania.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we had talked about this where he and Nikolai Volkov had beaten the U.S. Express for the tag titles.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also remember him when Sergeant Slaughter turned his back on America and became an Iraqi sympathizer. He came back as Colonel Mustafa.
Oh, this is all way before my time.
Oh, you're talking early 90s.
Gotcha.
Sergeant Slaughter became an Iraqi sympathizer during Desert Storm. So, if that tells you how long ago this was.
Yeah, that's some context.
Yeah. So basically, and he was doing the whole foreign heel. He legitimately was from Iran and was an Olympic level athlete, like wrestling wise.
Nice.
So yeah, he was legitimate. So obviously, we want to send our condolences to his family. So I hate to start this on a sad note, but obviously,
it happens like that sometimes.
Yeah, Iron Sheik was a big part of the 70s and the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And then before we get to the
concession
stand, thank you. We had a big event over the weekend. You and I went to Against All Odds. We went to go watch Impact Wrestling for the first time.
Yeah, it was also my first pay-per-view just in general.
Yeah, no, like it was my second pay-per-view. I had seen Invasion, which is actually my first ever live event. I am obviously not new to Impact. I've been watching since 2004. I used to have to buy the weekly pay-per-views. But you were new. You knew nobody going into this weekend.
Absolutely nobody.
No, so we went down to Columbus, Ohio. We were there for the pay-per-view Friday and then TV taping Saturday. I had an absolute blast.
Yeah, that's some of the best wrestling I've seen in a while. I had a great time.
Yeah, like I know the arena we saw that was kind of small, but we had some amazing. And actually, if you watch the pay-per-view and Impact for at least the next couple of weeks, you can see us. We're behind the commentary table, and it was probably, maybe 20 feet away, even from general admission?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely fantastic. The crowd was hot all night. I saw almost all of the people that I wanted to see. We were there for the amazing Alex Shelley's now the Impact World Champion, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
We saw the OVE reunion, which obviously, if you're doing an OVE reunion and do that in Ohio, they might have had home field advantage that night.
Yeah, no kidding.
No, like we like everybody, like there was all the top guys from Impact were there. I went to a few meet and greets. We ended up just talking with just random people all night. It was an absolute blast that whole weekend. And I want to do this because you missed this completely. You had picked a restaurant for us to see. By the way, shout out to, was it the 4th Avenue Tap House?
Yeah, 4th Street Tap Room and Kitchen.
Absolutely fantastic service.
Yeah, that's some of the best food I've had in a while.
Yeah, food was amazing, service was amazing, and props to them. We didn't know this was going on. They had a beer fest event going on. I guess it's a yearly event, and they were still able to accommodate us. We were lucky enough to get a table, but as busy as it was, the service didn't suffer at all.
No, not a bit.
No, but fun fact, we got to the We got a table, and it was the closest one to the door. I was facing outside. Your back was to the street, and we don't know we're walking past the house up, and we parked across the street. People are on the porch. It's Saturday. It's a nice day. Of course, people are going to be on the porch. My mom loves staying on the porch when it's nice outside. I look down. I'm on my phone, and you don't see any of this because your back's to the door.
Right.
I look up. All of a sudden, there's about 2 or 3 police cars. There's a police van. There's an ambulance. I think I saw a fire truck at one point. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Oh, God.
So I'm watching this, and I'm just like, we get dinner and a show all of a sudden. And I look, and they're talking to some people, and they bring out a guy from the porch or the house, or whatever, in handcuffs, put him in the back of the ambulance for whatever it is. Like I said, we're across the street. There's loud music. I don't know what's going on. I'm just going by what I see.
Right.
And then I don't know what else is going. Because obviously they, at least arrest one person because that's the only one I saw in handcuffs.
Mm-hmm.
So we go, and then we finished. Even like I said, even the lady that was our server, I didn't catch her name, was absolutely fantastic.
Oh, yes.
Even as busy where we were in and out at a relatively good time. Like food wasn't, the food quality didn't suffer. We got our food quicker than I expected, given how crowded the place was.
I don't think there was a lot of eating going on. It was just the beer.
No, but still, given as busy as that place was, the fact that we got our food that quick.
Right.
And it was good too. Like the food was fantastic.
I got a really nice grilled cheese and some Bosco breadsticks.
Yeah, and I got a fried chicken sandwich, and they used chicken thighs, which I'm a big fan of. And I would like to see the chicken that they got these thighs from, because that was one chicken thigh.
Yeah, I've seen meat birds. My mom bred them, didn't breed them, but my mom had meat birds for one season. It was so disgusting. They get so big they can't even move.
Well, this must have been immobile because that was the biggest thigh I've seen on a chicken.
Gotcha.
But that might have come from the chicken from Family Guy. It was so huge. And it was fantastic. But no, once again, props to them for the great service. And so if you guys are in the Columbus area, obviously go seek them out. What was the name again?
4th Street Tap Room and Kitchen.
Yeah, absolutely fan. Because the Impact was at one of the arenas at the fairgrounds, so that was like a mile away.
I believe it was the Kasich Center.
Yeah, but we were like a mile away from it.
Yeah.
And then also shout out to Sheets. It's our tradition. Every time we go to Columbus, we stop at Sheets on the way home.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that was absolutely fun. We're obviously, and it actually, by the time we got to the X Division title match, you were already a full Impact fan.
Oh yeah, fresh convert.
Yeah, like instantly.
Yeah.
So you said you said you did mention that one of your new favorites is Trey Miguel. Did you get any favorites between the pay-per-view and the TV tapings?
I like the character being played by Bully Ray now.
Okay, so you like the evil, nasty, mean Bully Ray.
Yeah.
Which is what he's been doing once he went solo, and he did some of this in Ring of Honor when he did Ring of Honor Fall. This is basically what he's been since the Dudley Boys went their separate ways.
I'm gonna say, yeah, I heard that part of that was because he wanted to do that in WWE, but they wouldn't let him.
Yeah, like he had done this during the first run in TNA when it was TNA. Now it's Impact.
Mm-hmm.
He did it then. He did it in Ring of Honor like that. I like it too. And I was happy that I got to see my favorite knockout, Killer Kelly. She had a absolutely brutal dog collar match.
Yeah, that was nasty.
So that was fine. Picked up her shirt. You got an OVE shirt because of course you did.
Of course.
So which of course it's OVE. Need we explain?
Yeah, I don't think we need to justify that one.
No. So, but yeah, once again, absolutely. Next time they come to Ohio, we're definitely going.
Hell yes.
We're getting a hotel this time.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to drive like that, nor do I have to want to go to work the day after.
Yeah, I did. I was at work at 7 a.m.
I did not make it to work on Sunday. I had a deer encounter.
Yeah, again.
Yeah, twice in 3 freaking months.
You go through cars like they're actually made of paper.
This one was not my fault.
No, but you're not known for you keep cars like I keep socks. Not very often.
Fair.
But hopefully everything's okay for the most part. You're healthy, which is more important. Which is the more important part.
Yeah, everything's in motion. I just gotta wait for word.
That's obviously that's the best case scenario after we're in the rural Ohio area. We see deers a lot, so that's best case scenario when you get into an accident with deer. Especially your car's not made to be hitting deer either.
No.
Wasn't made to be hitting deer with.
No, it was not. It was a little bitty thing.
Yeah. So we got all that out of the way. So now we are going into the concession stand. And what have you been consuming, sir?
Honestly, not a whole bunch. I've just been going back to old favorites. I've mentioned Sean Fay Wolf at Diamond Studios. Love his content. Haven't really done too much anime either.
Okay.
How about you, Xander?
Uh, Same. Like I've just been catching up on YouTube. Like I haven't had a chance to watch much of anything this week, especially with all our travel and everything else.
Yeah, that's basically what it's been for me too.
I've been watching, of course, Eric the Electric and all those trios of channels. Him, his girlfriend has their own channel, and then they have their together channel. The one I watched from him was a story about the world's largest man who was over 1,000 pounds,
Wow.
legitimately, and he ate his daily diet for a whole day. Like the guy started as like, oh yeah, like a dozen eggs and 32 sausages and a bunch of bacon and toast and a whole jar of jelly, and that was for breakfast, and then candy bars for two snacks, and then his lunch was huge, and then dinner.
Oh my god.
Uh-huh.
Like, was there a calorie breakdown of this?
Oh, the breakfast, he does a lot of the stuff he does is calorie breakdowns, but then he also does like your macros, like your salts and your cholesterol and your other stuff too.
Gotcha.
But just the breakfast was over 10,000 calories.
Holy shit.
I want to say at least half of the caloric intake for that video was breakfast, because it was bacon and sausage and eggs and a whole loaf of bread and a jar of jelly.
Wow.
Yeah. He gained a lot of weight on that one. And then the one his girlfriend has, her name escapes me. Hers are more cheat meals as opposed to like, voluminous intake.
Gotcha.
Like she still eats, she doesn't eat near the amount he does, but she'll still have like big meals, but they're more like in the cheat meal aspect.
Gotcha.
She was in Toronto, and all her meals that day came from Canadian McDonald's, and she only ate stuff that you can only get at Canadian McDonald's.
Oh, neat.
That's a weird thing that I've always found interesting when it comes to fast food, is the stuff that you can only get in specific countries for whatever reason.
Right.
So, and that's what that is. She ate nothing but Canadian McDonald's items. Like they have a double Big Mac, which is 4 patties.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, so once again, that's any kind of food video, and then I've been catching up on my countdown shows that I like watching, and I actually did get a watch because, once again, I want to show that we're both big fans of Wrestling with the Grit. It's his actually 10th anniversary this year of the show.
Mm-hmm.
He just did a watch along of his first video he ever did 10 years ago.
Oh, cool.
That was the video he posted today, which was kind of fun to watch.
Always fun to see where you started.
Yeah. So basically that's all I've really had time for. Once again, I'm still trying to get in on that, giving myself free time to do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And now let's get into Tubi or not Tubi. And sir, what was the movie you watched for this week?
The Wheels gave me Mythica the Godslayer, which is actually the 5th movie of 5 in that series.
Okay.
So as you put it last week, I was not punished, not overly much, for coming in on entry number 5. There were definitely things I missed, because I looked it up on Wikipedia, the series.
Uh-huh.
It's a trope fest, but tropes become tropes because they work. It was a fun trope fest.
Sure.
It was clearly a labor of love. I'm not sure how to say it. It was kind of on the line between amateur and professional, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, this wasn't a big budget.
No, definitely not.
Which sometimes some of the best movies you get in overall are like independent movies.
Yeah. I enjoyed the movie. I might seek out the series. I'm not sure. I don't watch a lot of movies anyway, so just take that with a grain of salt.
Sure. So what would you letterbox this?
I would letterbox this at 3 stars. Nice and average.
Fair. Which, have you started yours yet, sir?
I started it. I haven't really done anything with it.
At least you started it. To be fair, I've missed every movie we've done on Tubi or not Tubi, minus the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm behind a little bit. So for me, I got a movie I knew I was gonna love, and shocker, I did. I got The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Heard of it, never seen it.
Absolutely classic Clint Eastwood Western. It's actually, you want to talk about movies that are part of series, it's actually the third in a trilogy. You really don't need to watch the other ones. These are, I wouldn't say they're self-contained, but at the same time, you really don't need to watch the others because it's basically Clint Eastwood's character. He's the man with no name. He doesn't really officially have a name.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what's known. This was during the height of what they called spaghetti westerns. And for those that don't know, this was basically when the cast and crew were all Italian. These were made in Italy.
I had heard the term before, but I didn't realize that's what it meant.
It's literally because they're made in Italy, hence spaghetti.
Right.
And basically, what it is, the whole basis of the movie is that there's three guys. One's good, one's bad, and one's ugly.
Right.
I know, right? And they're all searching for Confederate gold. And supposedly there is they're all searching for this, and there's $200,000 of buried Confederate gold in Mexico.
Gotcha.
So you're going to talk about in this movie specifically 1862. So if you're talking $200,000 in 1862 money, hold on, let me pull this up. Pull up an inflation rate calculator. Okay, well I can't go that far back.
I googled it real quick. That'd be worth about $6 million.
Okay, thank you. So they're going for about $6 million in gold, and he has to reluctantly team up with one of them because he know there it's buried in a graveyard, and the one guy knows that it's what graveyard it's buried in, but Clint Eastwood's character knows where it's buried in the graveyard. They know half.
Gotcha.
And this is the whole thing. Like, you want to speak about tropes? This is the one. The movie starts with that famous Western song. Wah wah wah. Woo, 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 wah, wah, wah. Like everybody knows that song.
Oh yeah, I recognize it.
This is from here, and this is where you get the. This is what you also get what's known as the Mexican standoff. You've seen this in movies, especially Quentin Tarantino specifically used this scene, or like this is the scene, the inspiration for the scene in Reservoir Dogs, where everybody's standing in a circle and they're all pointing their guns at each other.
Right.
Known as the Mexican standoff. This happened. I don't know exactly if this is the movie that started that trope, but this is a lot of it came from this movie.
Gotcha.
You know, at the end, everybody, each guy has their two guns trained on the other two, and they're like waiting for the other person to make their move.
Right.
And it's a long movie. It's about a 2.5, 3 hour movie. Made in 1966, which, to put that to date, my mom was 6 years old when this movie came out. Oh, hold on. No, yep, she had just turned 6 when this movie came out. The day before Christmas, actually.
Wow.
I love Clint Eastwood. I love Westerns. I love Clint Eastwood Westerns. Like, everything about this movie is fantastic.
Gotcha.
Clint Eastwood made bank on this, too. He had just done, like, Rawhide and the other two movies. And he was given, let me pull this up again. He was given $250,000 and a cut of the profits.
Cut of the profits is always a good thing to have.
Yeah. Like, he got a percentage of percentage of the box office, which is how Jack Nicholson made so much fucking money off Batman 89.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
He got a cut of the profits. And you know how huge that movie was back then. So he made, was it close to 100 million? Like, I know he made high 8 figures off that movie.
Gotcha.
And yeah, 100%. If I had to give this is a 5 out of 5.
It certainly sounds like it from the way you described it.
Oh, 5 out of 5. I need to watch the other time. Like I said, I've seen the Fistful of Dollars. I don't think I've ever seen For a Few Dollars More.
Oh, really?
I don't think I've seen it. But this is the third in the trilogy. 100% 5 out of 5, without a doubt. Like it's at first it wasn't, but you know how hindsight is always 20/20. This has actually been considered a lot of places one of the greatest movies of all time.
Good deal.
It's on lists everywhere. Lists and countdowns as one of the greatest movies of all time. So many places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 5 out of 5, 100%. Which is funny because this would now be the third 5 out of 5 stars out of 5 stars on my Letterboxd.
Nice.
So, all right. So yeah. So we are going to go ahead and, as always, sir, acquiesce to you to go ahead and spin. What genre are we looking for today?
I'm looking for documentary.
All right. We'll see if we can get you a documentary. Nope. Ooh. Sir, you get martial arts movie.
Ooh, that could be fun too.
That could be fun, especially if you get one of those where the voice the dubbing doesn't match.
Oh, those are always hilarious.
I grew up with those movies as a kid.
There was a series on I think Fuse called Kung Fu where they kind of did that.
Or Kung Pao Enter the Fist. You got number 8. So the 8th martial arts movie for you. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh my god.
Sounds like I've got a good one.
My dude. Yeah, you do.
Alrighty, what am I watching?
You're watching the Jean-Claude Van Damme classic Kickboxer.
I know of Jean-Claude Van Damme. The only thing I really remember him from is Street Fighter the movie.
This is dude, this is one of his best.
Gotcha.
This actually spawned 4 sequels. He's only in the first one. This is one of those back in the day, like especially the 80s, early 90s, where they would have a movie like this that would have sequels that would either have nothing to do, like some of them would have like, oh, this side character is still in it. By the time you get to the 4th or 5th one, it means absolutely nothing to the first one.
Yeah, isn't that kind of what happened with Tremors?
Well, but see, the thing is, all the Tremors were connected because Michael Gross's character was in every single one of them.
Right. That's what I
But
meant.
I'm talking about like Van Damme's character's only in this one. And then you had the same character in 2, 3, and 4, and then a different character in 5.
Okay, now I'm tracking.
So by the time you get to the 5th one, it has absolutely nothing to do. So, but no, my dude, you get Kickboxer. I'm fucking jealous because I love this movie.
Yeah, I like Van Damme from what I've seen. Just Street Fighter stands out the most to me.
Fair.
Very firmly so bad it's good.
Oh, I love Street Fighter the movie. But, sir, you will enjoy this.
All right.
Okay, so for me, okay, we are going in genre. You know what? I haven't done a horror movie yet. Let me get a horror movie, and I'm not going to. Oh, okay. Based on true events, which means none of this in the movie actually happened.
Dramatization, I believe, is the word.
Yeah. These people are a lot exact. Okay, who do we get? Oh, 7.
Alrighty.
What do I get? Whoops. Are you fucking serious?
What'd you get?
Oh. Do you remember the first movie I did for Tubi or Not Tubi?
Remind me.
The romance, the French sex movie?
Oh, right, yeah.
Great, because I got a movie called Free the Nipple.
Oh, gosh.
I am not joking. It's a comedy drama, which means barely anything happened in this that was real. So the synopsis is based on a true story. A group of fearless women fight for the right to go topless in New York City as they smash taboos one bare breast at a time.
Oh, good grief.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, I get nudie movies, whenever I watch Tubi. You get Dead Presidents and Kickboxer and...
Smurfs, The Lost Village.
But I mean, you get... Or Attack the Block. I get French sex movies and movies about women going topless. Okay. Fine.
So that was a thing that just happened.
Oh, yeah. So we are obviously going to watch that. We're going to go ahead and we'll post the trailers up. Once this episode goes live, we'll go ahead and post the trailers up so you guys can see what we're watching and watch along with us. So we'll discuss it the next week.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, screw you.
I'm sure you mean that in the nicest way possible.
Sure. All right, let's go ahead and get to the wrestling part of it. We're this pay-per-view episode, so pay-per-views are anything we talk about. So we are watching the first ever Slamboree. Slamboree 93 came out on May 23rd, 1993, from the Omni in Atlanta, GA. And we open up with the pyro, pay-per-view pyro. We get Larry Zbyszko and Tony Schiavone. And they're introducing the show as all the announced legends that we've announced so far in the ring. And going by the list I have off Wikipedia, you got Lou Thez, Mr. Wrestling 2, Vern Gagne, Eddie Graham. Well, Eddie Graham wasn't there, but his son was there in his presence because Eddie Graham had passed at this point. We have Ole Anderson, the Assassin, Ox Baker, Red Bastion, Lord James Blears, the Crusher, the Fabulous Moolah, who actually comes out here in a moment, Greg Gagne, Bob Geigel, Stu Hart, Magnum TA, Bugsy McGraw, Don Owen, Dusty Rhodes, Grizzly Smith, John Tolos, Mad Dog Vachon, and Johnny Valentine. All of those were in the ring. Like, they had done like a pre-show ceremony, and by the time the show had gone to air, they were already still in the ring.
Absolutely star-studded cast.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh, what's going on here? That we get this big sedan coming out, we the big covered sedan, like, ooh, fancy. And I actually noticed one of the guys carrying it was Chick Donovan. We've seen him on like WCW Saturday Night a few times. He was one of the guys in the front.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So, and who pops out of the sedan?
Fabulous Moolah.
And then the segment's over.
Yep.
That's basically, they bring her out. She waves. Max Payne was already in there playing his guitar.
Norma Jean.
Yeah, and then Tony throws to Missy and Eric, who are going over some of the events. Eric says Scott Norton was jumped by someone named The Prisoner, who will be facing Sting instead. We will go into that amazing match later on. But basically what had happened was Scott Norton wanted more money. They wouldn't give it to him, so he left.
Yeah.
And they got The Prisoner. So we go into our first match, which was a match you and I were both looking forward to. Actually, most of the matches we were all looking forward to.
Yeah, all of these matches on paper had a lot of promise.
Except for one.
And we'll get there.
Before the replacement, it had potential.
Yes.
But we got one of the first tag team matches tonight. Bobby Eaton and Chris Benoit versus Too Cold Scorpio and Marcus Bagwell. And I right off the bat, Scorpio and Benoit had crazy good chemistry.
Yeah, they really did.
And I like it when you can it's almost like the other person, you've done it enough times before where you can work with each other and counter the counter to the counter.
So yeah, this got really flashy and fast in a hurry.
Yeah, like their two styles, I thought their two styles really meshed well together because they're two different, both you would consider light heavyweights, but their styles are radically different.
Right.
And then Bobby coming off the top, who was surprisingly a decent high flyer in his own right, with a nice knee job on Bagwell. So we got the heels taken over there for a while.
Yeah. Get that usual ref spot too, where Scorpio's getting mugged. That degenerates into a 4-man brawl.
Yeah, but yeah, because you noticed the whole match, you had really good tag work between Benoit and Eaton, who also had pretty good chemistry for like a relatively new tag team.
Yeah, there was mention that Bobby made his career tag teaming so he could teach Benoit a lot.
Oh yeah, like we know most people know Bobby Eaton from the Midnight Express, who are considered one of the greatest tag teams of all time. He's won U.S. titles, world tag titles. He was in, like I said, we mentioned about a week or so ago, he was in the War Games match, and he was part of the Dangerous Alliance, and he was tag champions with Arn Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
He's considered one of the greatest tag wrestlers of all time for a reason, and we see it here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you said earlier on, the match does break down, but because Scorpio hits that twisting splash, I recognize this from the Clash of the Champions from our first episode when he hit Scotty Flamingo with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Benoit does break it up, but there is a little bit of miscommunication by the bad guys who lets Scorpio hit the tumbleweed for the win, and this just mystifies Larry.
Yeah, that took 9 minutes and 26 seconds.
Very dense in a good way.
Yeah, the good kind of dense.
Good kind of dense. Hot opener. This is a good way to get the crowd hyped.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I like this match. There was no notes.
Yeah, there was one other spot that I really liked.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there was a spot where Benoit was holding Bagwell against the ropes. Bobby charges, and Bagwell was able to elevate him over the ropes and then slingshot Benoit all in basically one sequence. I thought that was really neat.
Oh, Bagwell's, I think, underrated. He was also considered one of the best tag wrestlers. I think he had 6 tag title reigns in WCW with a lot of partners.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was that many.
Oh, yeah. Like, I think him and Scorpio won the titles, I think, at one point. I know he won the tag titles with the Patriot. The American Males won tag titles, and then he won a handful, once he had turned to the NWO and the latter half of WCW.
Mm-hmm.
We go back to Tony and Larry, who were talking about Colonel Parker and Van Hammer, this wonderful rivalry.
Such as it is.
Yeah. So Van Hammer comes out, and Colonel Parker comes out, and he announces his new charge, the man who rules the world, Sid Vicious.
That's a name I've heard before, but I don't know anything about him.
Well, the people in the crowd did because he got a huge reaction.
Yeah, I noticed that was a pretty big pop.
Yeah, just because he had been in WCW before. Like I said, he was a member of the Four Horsemen at one point.
Mm-hmm.
He had gotten into he had a feud with Sting for a while. Went to WWF. He was part of the '92 Royal Rumble that Ric Flair won. He wrestled Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 8. He had a spell in WWF. Went back to WCW. There was an incident that happens that gets him fired. We will talk about once we get there, because that does affect Starrcade this year.
Starrcade is WCW's flagship event, right?
Yeah, but that's in December.
Okay.
So we got a lot of time before we get there. And then he goes back to WWF in the mid 90s. Goes back to WCW at the end. So he goes back and forth between WWF and WCW a lot.
Gotcha.
So we'll be seeing plenty of Sid at this point. And once again, we'll see what happens at Beach Blast, which they promote that a couple times here. Yeah. He comes in, clotheslines, power bombs Van Hammer, and wins.
Yeah, that was 35 seconds. This was just nothing.
Yeah, but that's what it was there for, to bring back Sid. And we realize just how big Sid is, because we know how big Van Hammer is.
Right. Sid's even bigger.
Yeah. It's almost like a Pokemon evolution.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And then we get one of the first of many promos with Eric and Missy over some of the legends that are here tonight, with Red Bastien and Bugsy McGraw. And this was fun. Bugsy was nuts and I loved it.
Yeah, it was very fun.
So we go into our first of 3 Legends matches. And by the way, all the Legends get the exact same theme song through every match.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, no, like even for the 6-man tag, it doesn't stop for all 6 men.
Mm-hmm.
We get the first, it's a 6-man tag. It is Dick Murdoch, Don Morocco, and Superfly Jimmy Snuka versus Chief Wahoo McDaniel, Blackjack Mulligan, and Jim Brunzell. And I know you and I were talking, off air, talking about the show and going over our notes. And you had asked me, hey, Xander, is there a way you can connect this show, King of the Ring, and the Iron Sheik all at once? You remember asking me that, right?
Right.
So I can actually do that. Because, of course, if anybody could, I do it.
Absolutely, you could.
So, and you specifically, I know right away you did ask me this question, did you not?
I did.
Yeah. So, we all know that 93's King of the Ring was the first pay-per-view one. They were house shows before then, from 85 to 91. And the first one in 1985 was won by...
Who was it won by?
The marvelous Don Morocco, who beat...
Who beats?
The Iron Sheik.
I see.
So because I can, and because of course I can, because I know random shit like that, King of the Ring, Slamboree, and the late Iron Sheik all at once.
How about that?
Are you surprised?
No, I'm really not.
No. But I do want to say that given this was 93, and obviously these were all these guys were older, they had retired at this point, minus Jim Brunzell, who we just saw on Raw, about 2-3 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic shape.
Yeah. And I think we got face-offs between every possible pairing, and all of them were good.
Yeah, and they all looked like obviously they're older and they had retired at this point, but they still looked like they could at least lace up the boots one more time.
Absolutely.
Like, a lot of them, even like Wahoo McDaniel, still look the same. Talking about all these different title reigns these guys had, and one of them said they had a title reign in 1972. My mom was 12.
Yeah, we talked about how old your mom was earlier.
Yeah, but I'm just talking, you just got to consider, these guys had title reigns in the 70s before my mom was in high school.
Okay.
But then anybody that knows me knows the kind of style I like watching. I love watching old Wahoo McDaniel matches.
Mm-hmm.
Especially he had a feud with Roddy Piper that was great. There was a famous feud with Greg Valentine where Greg Valentine broke his leg and he walked around with a shirt that said, "I broke Wahoo's leg."
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it was great. Like, Wahoo's fun to watch. And this, like you said, a lot of this was, a lot of the guys, basically, all the different duos almost practically paired off with each other at one point. And this just breaks down into good old Donnybrook. I love using the word Donnybrook.
Yeah. And that's the end of the match. 9 minutes, 27 seconds. A lot of basics, but damn good for that.
Yeah, and this was like a no contest. Like, I wasn't expecting anything. Like I said, a lot of these guys had been out of the ring for several years. I wasn't expecting anything out of it, but for what we got, basically they knew what they could do.
And they did it well.
Yeah. It was a no contest. And we get Missy, back in the interview area, she's with the assassin and Mad Dog Vachon. And damn it, Missy, he wasn't done talking because she was talking to Mad Dog. She goes to pull the microphone away. He goes, "Yo, I'm not done talking yet." I was like, "Go, Mad Dog." But this was great. Assassin was still talking about how he was ready to throw down with Dusty at one point. He says, "I still got one left in me."
Will that ever happen?
We'll find out eventually.
Okay.
But yeah, this once again, the legends were great. This was fun.
Yes, very fun.
And then we get into our second Legends match is the tag match. It is Ivan Koloff and Baron von Raschke versus Thunderbolt Patterson and Brad Armstrong, which we'll explain here in a moment. But Ivan Koloff, obviously he was one of the Russians, especially during the Cold War area, the late 70s, early 80s, was always one of the biggest bad guys, especially like the mid-Atlantic Jim Crockett Promotions era, because Russians were bad in the 80s.
Right.
Because, Cold War. And he was actually the first person to beat Bruno for the world title. Bruno had it for 8 years straight at that point.
Yeah, I remember the mention of that.
Yeah, this was the one. He won with a knee drop. Supposedly, air quotes here, broke Bruno's neck with a knee drop. And Bruno had it for so long, when Ivan won it, the crowd went silent.
Oh, wow.
And then, obviously, Bruno won it back. And then I think he had it for another 3 or 4 years after that before losing it to the recently passed superstar Billy Graham.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then his tag partner, Baron von Raschke, who was the evil German that happened like in the, before they had the evil Russians, they had the evil Germans.
Right.
And a lot of times you would see him goose step to the ring sometimes, and he was known he was one of those that was known to have the claw, the claw's the finisher.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was an evil German.
Gotcha.
And then a guy I was kind of excited to see, like I said, I haven't seen a whole lot of him other than like Starcades and stuff I've seen on the network or Peacock, was Thunderbolt Patterson. If I was at the right age when he was in his prime, I would have loved me some Thunderbolt Patterson.
Yeah, the one bit we saw of him during the promotion for Slamboree was really impressive.
Yeah, and then it was supposed to be Bullet Bob Armstrong, but he had surgery. So the Thunderbolt's like, "I'll take you on both at the same time." It's like, "Oh, we're gonna have a handicap match," and out comes Brad Armstrong, who's gonna take the place. And this whole opening segment was awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Because Thunderbolt's ready to throw hands. He doesn't care.
Yeah, he got no fucks left to give.
Yeah, and the funny thing was, every time Thunderbolt was in the ring, I had a grin on my face the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I loved, just the way he did stuff. He was just full of vim and vigor.
I like that.
Yes, it was so much fun to watch. Quick back and forth. Thunderbolt won with against the Baron with a shot to the throat.
Yeah, that looked painful. 4 minutes, 40 seconds, and again, solid basics.
Yeah, I liked it. Once again, everybody knew what they could do. And they did it. They weren't trying to do, go for
They weren't trying to go long.
Exactly. Or they weren't trying to do more than they knew they could do. So this is exciting. We're getting a live flare for the gold, guys.
Ooh.
And this is a special one because we're reuniting the Four Horsemen. And here out comes Rick in the tuxedo. Like, all the ladies are all super fancy it up. Arn comes out in a tux. He says they were going to bring out Tully Blanchard. And in kayfabe, apparently Barry Windham got to him and he snubbed him. But from the research I did, the money they were offering Tully to come back to wrestling to be a member of the Horsemen was not what he wanted.
Gotcha.
So he just didn't come. They bring out Ole Anderson, who was a part of the original Four Horsemen. And then they introduce the newest member.
Paul Roma. I had never heard of this guy.
You remember when we were talking about the Young Stallions a while back when Jim Powers had that match on Raw?
Mm-hmm.
This is the guy he tagged with. And then they were the white meat babyface for a while, and then he had that tag, which I did like the tag team he had with Hercules called Power and Glory. I like them. But Ric Flair has gone. I know Ric Flair had said this in his biography. He's said this more than once. Paul Roma he never liked Paul Roma as a horseman. He thinks Paul Roma was one of the worst horsemen he ever had. There was ever there.
Gotcha.
Because you got to consider, you had Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Sid Vicious at one point, Barry Windham was a horseman at one point. Sting in storyline was a horseman for a while. That also involved RoboCop, that's a story.
What?
Legitimately involved RoboCop. I'm not joking.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Capital Combat.
Okay.
Matter of fact, speaking of Brian Zane, Wrestling with Regret did one of his long form pay per view reviews on Capital Combat.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you think that part. I'm glad you think it's cool now. Um, and then later on, you had Benoit as a horseman, Pillman was a horseman, Dean Malenko. You get all these guys that are considered like some of the all-time greats, right?
Right.
Paul Roma. You had Steve McMichael, who had a lot of matches, but he played football for the Bears.
Uh-huh.
He trained to be a wrestler. He was a wrestler for a while, especially when he gets on TV in the like 95 or so. Better horseman than Paul Roma.
Okay.
And you could even tell the crowd was like, we're like, oh, who are we getting? Oh, we're getting somebody cool, Paul Roma. And everybody's like, oh.
Crowd just kind of deflated.
Oh, and it was just, woo. And it just like, even like, I mean, Roma had a good look, but you could tell you had guys like Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson could talk on the mic. Paul Roma was not up to their caliber even when it came on the microphone.
Gotcha.
This did not go over well.
Yeah, I could tell from the how quiet the crowd went at this revelation.
Yeah, like you could even tell, like, I don't think Roma was ready for this. I mean, considering who was a horseman before that and after.
Right.
We go back to Tony and Larry, who are ringside with Johnny Valentine, who's going to be commentary for this next match. And they also announced their next pay-per-view is going to be Beach Blast in July 18th. So we have this in May, King of the Ring in June, Beach Blast in July, SummerSlam in August.
Pretty stacked lineup of pay-per-views.
Yeah. At least it doesn't get to the point where, we get into the late 90s where WCW and WWF each had 12 pay-per-views.
Right. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah. Where was the one year that, once WCW had gone, there was one year where they, WCW or WWF was trying like the Tuesday pay-per-views.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 22 at one point, one year?
That many?
Yeah, it was well past 12.
Wow.
Because you had the brand splits and everything. I think it was 22 at one point. But yeah, so yeah, we're going to have May, June, July, at least May, June, July, and August. We're going to have at least a pay-per-view.
Probably got another Clash of the Champions in there somewhere too.
I think June or August.
Okay.
Matter of fact, let me look that up real quick. But yeah, Johnny Valentine was considered one of the greatest U.S. champions of all time. He was Johnny V as the manager. His son was Greg Valentine.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at 93, June. So less than a month.
Okay.
Matter of fact, it is the week after King of the Ring, which was June 13th. This was June 16th. So we're going to have a supersized episode after King of the Ring. So we're going to have King of the Ring, and then the WCW, the Monday Night Raw the night after, Clash of the Champions 23, and then WCW 79 after that. So those are going to be 2 big weeks for us.
Oh, yeah.
So we got January, June, August, and November 93.
Okay.
And then 4 in 94, 2 in 95, 2 in 96, and 2 in 97.
Okay.
Anyway, so we get into our last match of the Legends trio match. It's a one-on-one match. Dory Funk Jr., who was a heavyweight champion back in the 60s, brother of Terry Funk Jr., the only brother duo who were NWA World Champions.
Mm-hmm.
They're billing this basically as NWA versus AWA. He's accompanied by former NWA World Champion Gene Kiniski, and he's going up against Nick Bockwinkel, who was an AWA champion many times over, and Vern Gagne, who was not only the owner of the AWA, he was the AWA champion many times over.
Awesome.
So, and here's the thing: in their prime, and a lot of times world champions would do this too. Ric Flair was known for this. These guys, if you could have had Joey Funk in his prime versus Nick Bockwinkel in his prime, this match could have gone on for an hour easy.
Gotcha.
Because there was a lot of times where like the main event would have been like, especially for like a world title, an hour.
Mm-hmm.
No question.
Yeah, obviously they can't go anywhere near that long at this point in their lives.
But you could still tell that it was still there.
Yeah, this was again a lot of basics and incredibly solid for that.
Yeah. Now here, like I've established that this is kind of the stuff I like. Like I could watch Dory Funk Jr. or Nick Bockwinkel matches now, and you can tell that not a lot of people like this style now. Even then, I really dug it. I liked it,
I liked it too.
and you can just tell like how quick what's like considered American wrestling, how much that changes quick. Especially once
Right,
you start seeing other countries' styles kind of mesh in with American wrestling.
right.
Because you're talking 60s, 70s was different from the 80s and 90s. And like 93 wrestling would not go over today in 2013.
Absolutely
Excuse me,
not.
2023 even.
Yeah,
This 93 wrestling would not have gone over. And I'm sure in 20 years, in 2043, what's hot in 2023 is not going to go over.
yeah. Things evolve.
Yeah, like we have the Attitude Era within the next few years. This would not have lasted in the Attitude Era.
Right.
And then what happened in the Attitude Era would not have lasted once we got into the what WWE called the Ruthless Aggression Era. Like this is it's crazy how much stuff changes.
Yeah,
But yeah, like I know a lot of people call it boring. I wouldn't consider this match boring. It was just not what they were used to. But like I said, it was basics, counters. I liked it.
yeah. It was very good for that.
Yeah, and then the pace got picked up in the last 5 minutes where they really started to pick up the pace. Bockwinkel had the pile driver. Dory Funk went for his spinning toe hold. And then, funny point, at one point, Bockwinkel had Dory Funk locked into something, and Gene just walks in and just stomps on him and walks out. And ref doesn't call DQ. He's like, "Hey, don't do that again."
Yeah, I marked down that was a figure four.
Okay, I don't remember. It was a figure four. So he comes in, stomps on Bockwinkel, and the ref doesn't call it DQ. And I'm like, probably because I normally they probably would have, but I think considering that's what kind of match this was, the ref's like, I'll let it go.
Yeah,
But the match does end in a time limit draw.
yeah. So yeah, 15 minutes. It worked.
Yeah, I liked it. Once again, this is my kind of style of match. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, I had a great time with this match.
And I kind of like, all the, everybody shaking hands with each other, but Vern is not shaking hands with Gene Kaninsky. He's like, hey, fuck was that?
Yeah,
So we go to the next interview segment with the Legends where Eric is now interviewing Lou Thesz and Bob Geigel. And just consider, like, I guess they say this later on when they have the Hall of Fame ceremony. Lou Thesz had just had a match in Japan a couple years before this.
mm-hmm.
He won his first world title in 1937.
Yeah. Wow. That's some context.
Yeah. And then, it was nice to get also some insight about the what happened with the Legends matches between from Geigel and Lou Thesz. It's nice to get, insight from the Legends from back then. So we get into a tag match I was actually looking forward to. Ravishing Rick Rude and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff versus Dustin Rhodes and Kensuke Sasaki.
Yeah, I was expecting good things from this match.
Yeah, and then I know, like, I kept remembering the name, Sasaki's name. Like, I knew him from somewhere, and then it dawned on me while I was taking notes for this match.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, the Legion of Doom, Road Warriors would have come. They had broken up and gone their separate ways because of personal things.
Right.
Hawk went to Japan.
Gotcha.
And he teamed with Kensuke Sasaki, and they were known as the Hellraisers. This is where they talked about this in the match, the tag team, the Hellraisers.
Gotcha.
And Sasaki was given the name Power Warrior. So Animal Power Warrior, they were known as the Hellraisers. Basically, they had the face paint and the shoulder pads and everything.
Gotcha.
It was basically the Road Warriors and everything, but name only.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that happened for a few years. And he would, like, once the Legion of Doom and the Road Warriors got back together, he would bring back the character occasionally to team up with them. But after the Hellraisers kind of went their own ways, he never really went back to it. But I didn't realize he would be off and on in WCW until 96.
Nice.
This was nice to see for me. Like I grew up watching a lot of Rick Rude, especially in his first run in WWF, where he would say, I need all you fat, inbred, loudmouth, poor people to shut your mouth so you sweathouse can see what a real man's like. And he would do the robe and show off like his six-pack and everything.
Right.
That was a fun throwback for me to see. And it was kind of fun to watch Paul Orndorff do it with him.
Yeah.
And you could just tell how much I loved watching Rick Rude sell. He would do the wiggles and wobbles and flips. It was awesome.
Yeah, so good.
And like I think this is the longest match you've seen Rick Rude do.
Yeah, this was a pretty lengthy one.
Yeah. And I loved, like, the one spot I always liked when Dustin Rhodes did is he would run at a guy, hit him a couple times, and he would always do a crossbody, and the guy would duck, and Rhodes would just eat shit.
Yeah, that's fun.
And then he did this, but this time he did the crossbody over the top rope.
Yeah, like I couldn't tell why he did that. It was like he just flung himself over.
That was just a spot he liked to do. He would do the crossbody, and then the other guy would duck, and he would just eat shit. You would trust me. The more Dustin Rhodes matches you'll see, he does. It's one of his. That was one of his trademarks. I mean, yeah, you would see him do it as Gold Dust every so often. I think he still does it every once in a while.
Gotcha.
That was just one of his spots. And then this was cool. I noticed the counter. They're going back and forth. This was a relatively even match up until the end.
Yeah.
Rick Rude went for a pile driver, but Dustin fought out of it. He was trying to get out of it, so he turned it into a side slam, which then Dustin Rhodes countered that into a tombstone. I thought that whole sequence was fantastic.
Yeah, I made particular note of that because I like that so much.
Yeah. And then once we were talking about his sells, Rick Rude had some of the best atomic drop sells ever, and we saw that here.
Oh, yeah.
Just the way he just like, wiggle wobble, and the facial expressions. There used to be, like, there's these Twitter accounts I see every so often. They don't last very long because of copyright or whatever. Well, they'll do, like, old school WWF stuff or WWE stuff, like old videos or segments or characters or whatever. I like following them.
Mm-hmm.
There was one around for a short time that all it was Rick Rude selling atomic drops.
That sounds fun.
Well, it was, because every time he sold an atomic drop, it looked like that.
Gotcha.
He would do something crazy, like, just out of, like, nonsensical, and it was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the match finally breaks down at the end. Sasaki looks like he's going to go to some kind of top rope maneuver. Orndorff pushes him off into a rude awakening, and the bad guys win.
9 minutes, 42 seconds. Great match.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. And it wasn't dense. There was just enough. It wasn't too dense, but there wasn't a lot of dead space in between. Like, I think this was, like, perfectly paced and perfectly
well paced.
Yeah. So we go to the ring again later on. Gordon Soley's in the ring for a ceremony for the first inductions in the WCW Hall of Fame, and he goes over a list of legends who have passed on, and the crowd couldn't shut the fuck up for 2 seconds.
Because of course.
Which, once again, I always said the worst part about being a wrestling fan is wrestling fans.
Right.
And I will stand by that.
I gotcha.
So, I like what they do is the 3 that they announced, all of them get these really nice video packages. Kind of old school look, kind of showing, like, some of their highlights.
Yeah.
And Gordon inducts Luthez. And then he also inducts Vern Gagne, going over all of his accomplishments. And then they announced Mr. Wrestling 2, which there was a funny story about this, because especially, you know how in Mexico, like, the mask is sacred. You don't take off the mask for anything.
Right.
And Mr. Wrestling 2 did this too. And there's a funny story about how some of his fans or people that he had become friendly with was Jimmy Cutter's wife and his mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
He became acquaintances with him, and I don't know, through, like, fans or something or whatever. But after, once they had developed this friendship, Jimmy Carter invites him to, he gets elected to the White House, and he invites him to, like, the White House for, like, the inauguration and all the festivities goes on with that.
Right.
So he comes up to the White House with his mask on. And Secret Service is like, "Sir, we're going to need you to take the mask off." He's like, "No, thank you." And he leaves.
Yeah, that was a great story.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. And then Eddie Graham had passed away, but so they induct him into the Hall of Fame, but his son Mike Graham accepts the award on the behalf. And all the gentlemen get nice plaques. Like, I thought this was a very nice ceremony.
Absolutely it was.
So, and then we get Misty, who's with James Blair's and John Tolos. And I was like, "Misty, could you stop trying to have sex with these men, please?" Because she was like, "Oh, hello, guys. Ew. Ew, here's a monocle. Ew, I'm so pretty." Oh, I was like, "Misty, stop."
Yeah, she was just really insufferable here.
And speaking of insufferable, straight up worst match of the night, I'm going to say it right now. We get a bounty match between Sting and what was supposed to be Scott Norton. We already talked about this earlier in the show. Out comes the Prisoner. And the crowd shits on this instantly.
Yeah, like, they're not having any of this.
Yeah, for those that don't know, the Prisoner is the former Nails with a Z from WWF, who came out, and this was actually his full-on gimmick in WWF, orange jumps and everything. The idea originally was because Big Boss Man was real popular at the time, and before wrestling, Big Boss Man was legitimately a prison guard.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. And so his first feud was with Big Boss Man. He came out and was like, oh, Big Boss Man treated me bad. He abused me as a prisoner. So he comes out and like beats the shit out of Big Boss Man, and they have a feud.
Mm-hmm.
Then also the big SummerSlam 92 in Wembley, he had a match with Virgil. And supposedly the rumor is, too, like when he left, because he actually did get an action figure, like when they had the Galoob action figures where each wrestler had like could do like a clothesline or a slam or something.
Mm-hmm.
He had one. There is a nails one. But he either the royalties he was supposed to get from SummerSlam, the pay-per-view payment, he didn't get or not enough. Or the rumor was he was sexually harassed by Vince McMahon.
Oh, God.
So he goes, regardless of whatever the story, I've heard both stories.
Okay.
But he goes into Vince McMahon's office during a show one time and like starts to literally throttle him.
Oh, my God.
So he gets fired. And then when they have the Vince McMahon steroid trial that happens, like I think either this year or next year,
Mm-hmm.
he's one of the defendant. You know, he's one of the guys that the prosecution brings in, and then just talks so much shit about how bad Vince McMahon is. It's one of the reasons, one of the cases why the case was lost.
Oh.
And this was a bullshit chant, and I get it because he did nothing but like even in WWF, like the chokes was the majority of everything he did was just chokes.
So yeah, I noticed that in this match, he was choking Sting on the mat, choking him with the camera cables.
Yeah, like you saw his entire offense. Like if this was WWF, like one of the 2K games, it would be every single match in his moveset would be a choke of some sort.
Like the Brock Lesnar meme after 15 German suplexes.
Basically, yeah. But yeah, this match was rough. This was just like I'm just like, please end it, please end it, please end it.
Yeah.
And how I wrote it in my notes, Sting mercifully won with the top rope clothesline.
Yeah. 5 minutes, 18 seconds, nothing.
This was horrible.
Yeah.
But there is a bit of good news that comes with this.
And what is that?
We never see the prisoner again.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, this is it. This was awful. Because you can think about the last pay-per-view, because you can't blame Sting because the last pay-per-view we had was Super Brawl. You had that strap match with Vader, which was fucking fantastic.
Yeah, that match was great.
And then you get this the next pay-per-view. So it's not Sting, obviously. Right. So we get another promo for Beach Blast. And it's kind of funny how Tony and Larry are talking as they set up the cage for the tag title match. And then this was probably my favorite like Legends promo of the night. We get Erickson in there with the Crusher and Ox Baker, this was a cool moment for Eric because he said he had grown up. Even he has said this multiple times, not just here, but like in interviews and his podcast. He grew up watching the Crusher,
right?
Because you had the Crusher and the Bruiser as a tag team in AWA, and then you had Ox Baker, who was who was known as had the master of the Heart Punch. That supposedly he would kill a man because legitimately what had happened is he gave a guy a heart punch in the ring. That was his finisher, the heart punch. Which was literally a punch to the chest. Looked like you punch him in the heart.
Uh-huh.
I might have tried to put that in my moveset at one point.
Good for you.
Because it's just simple and it looks good. Like, basically you put the guy's arm behind his head and you just whack right in the chest.
Gotcha.
And what had happened is the guy had another condition. He goes to the backstage and he dies in the locker room after the show.
Oh, my God.
But the whole storyline where Ox, because he was the bad guy, said this was the move that can kill a man.
Right.
And that's what he was known for, is the heart punch. And he was actually also in another movie I like from John Carpenter, Escape from New York with Kurt Russell, one of the Snake Plissken movies.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually he actually has to fight, Snake Plissken actually has to fight Ox Baker in the movie.
Oh, cool.
That's the other big thing I know him from is his wrestling, the heart punch, and then Escape from New York.
Gotcha.
But they just started they started throwing promos against each other.
Oh, yeah.
Crusher started cutting a promo on Ox. Ox started cutting a promo on friggin' the Crusher. I thought this was fucking awesome. This was fantastic.
Was great.
This was I was just like, I wanted to watch these guys fight. They sold me to fight.
Yeah, that would have been a great match if they'd been up for it.
Yeah, I would have been. I don't think it would have, like, in 93 it wouldn't have done as well. But you had me sold, though. I was like, okay.
Right.
And then we get our tag title match. It was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Shane Douglas versus the Hollywood Blondes in a cage match. Now, like when we do research for the show, like we'll look into other shows, but we don't watch other shows like we do Saturday night. Like that was basically the flagship show for WCW at the time until Nitro. So, and I remember because we talked about the Los Dos Hombres, the two men. Literally, it translates to the two men.
Right.
Came out, and then Ricky Steamboat came and congratulated them. Now they said they wanted the title match. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, that was a segment on Saturday night in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, but then like with like Pro and like all the other WCW shows, for some reason they established that it was Shane Douglas and Ricky Steamboat under the masks, and they got a couple matches over on the champions, and this was all really like I don't have the full story because once again this happened off Saturday night.
Right.
During this, all this was going to happen. Shane Douglas left the WCW. Oh, it was like overpay and other things. He left. He goes over to ECW, which is where he gets prime Shane Douglas is where you get the franchise and ECW and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So this was not Shane. Like Shane Douglas was gone. That was not Shane under the mask. It was actually the Z-Man Tom Zank.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously we'll get into it later that Ricky Steamboat does unmask, but they told Zank no matter what you do, don't take the mask off.
Right, you got to maintain the illusion that it's still Douglas under there.
Exactly, because they still say that it's Ricky Steamboat and Shane Douglas.
Right.
And then they get to when they have on the intros, the champs come down the ring. They have these two random men in suits who are sitting there making blah 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 talk.
Right.
Which I learned when I was in the theater. A lot of times when you want to make the sound, it sounds like you're talking. It's just you say rhubarb.
Really?
Rhubarb, 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 while talking, and it just sounds like talk.
I didn't know that.
They have theater tricks say rhubarb.
Cool.
So they're rhubarb. I'm going to call it rhubarbing, because they're not talking about anything particular.
They're posing for the camera, basically.
Basically, we don't know who they are yet. Could they be Hollywood agents or something for this, that, and we'll see if this goes anywhere.
Right.
But holy shit, that first rope spot.
Yeah.
Ouch. Yo, where and it wasn't the fact that he suplexed him in the cage; he suplexed him into the ropes.
Right.
I was like, "Good God!"
Yeah, that looked awful.
And then you had another insane spot where Austin was hung upside down, and one of them, because Ricky hadn't unmasked yet, cross-bodied into Austin while he was hung upside down, smashed him against the cage.
Oh yeah, that looked awful.
Yeah. And see, what I liked about this cage match, and this is when it comes to, we've had this discussion about my lack of interest in death matches. I'm not the biggest death match fan. Nothing against them, it's just not my jam. I don't shit on what you like.
Right.
But what I liked about it, when it comes to the street fights, and we saw the street fight when we went to go against All Odds, which was a fantastic street fight.
Oh yes, it was amazing.
Yeah, barbed wire, tables, trash cans. They actually were selling the trash can of one of the chairs at the merch stand the next day.
Yeah, I loved that.
If I would have had the money, I would have bought the chair, because it was 150, but it was signed by all the members of OVE, which was really cool.
Oh yes, that was a really nice little spot.
I think somebody did buy it because I didn't see it when we went back in, so I think somebody might have bought it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, like what I liked is they didn't just use the cage for the sake of using the cage. I felt like the spots they used the cage for like heightened the good parts of this match.
Yeah, they used the cage at reasonable spots, not just because it was there.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, I'm going to use a light tube because I have it. It's like, no, like one of the wrestlers I used to like watching do the match matches was this Japanese wrestler. His name was Ryuji Ito.
Mm-hmm.
And his finisher was like a D'Lo Brown style frog splash, but he had he would do a light tube over it, so he would do a frog splash and smash you with the light tube in between.
Uh-huh.
But I was like, it's like they're using it to. They're not using the cage in ways just to use the cage.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, I'm going to use tables and chairs and light tubes and glass just because I can. It's like, no. To me, it makes more sense if you're using it with the move, not as the move, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like you get suplexed into the cage, but you're not just for the sake of getting suplexed into the cage.
Yeah, you're not using the cage for the sake of using the cage. That's my problem with deathmatch wrestling, but that's, once again, that's my opinion. If you like deathmatch wrestling, God bless you.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, this was another very equal back and forth match.
Yeah, there was a really neat spot where Steve got hung from the cage like he's in the Tree of Woe.
Yeah, this was that one spot I was just talking about.
Oh, I must have got it mixed up with something else.
No, you're fine. And then I would say spot of the night is Steamboat unmasks, climbs to the top of the cage, and crossbodies both men.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And then he goes for a pin, but the bell, it was only 2 count, but the bell rang for some reason. There must have been some sort of miscommunication.
Yeah, I was confused about that.
Yeah, but this was a nice finish where Austin counters Douglas slash Zank into a stun gun, and he goes for a cover as Pillman DDT Steamboat, and the bad guys win.
16 minutes, 8 seconds. Great match.
Fantastic. Like, honestly, I'm going to say it right now. Other than the Sting match, every match here was, to me, a B, no lower than a B.
Agreed.
So, and we get some more comments from, this is the last comments we get before the main event. We have 2 matches left here. We get Dusty Rhodes, Eric's down there with Dusty Rhodes, Stu Hart, and Mr. Wrestling 2. And not only do we get to talk about Stu Hart, because once again, if it's a Hart or Neidhart, they're part of the Hart Wrestling family. He's trained a lot of guys in the dungeon, which is literally the basement of his house.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, if you came out of the dungeon, you could wrestle.
Gotcha.
Like, you got like Jericho, Benoit, all the Harts, Neidharts. Pillman came from the dungeon at one point. Like, if you came out of the dungeon alive, figuratively, you could go.
Like if you graduated from the dungeon, basically.
Yeah, there was no like ceremony, but it was like if you got the blessing, you could go.
Right.
And it's funny listening to, I used to have Bret Hart's autobiography that I read many times. Just his experiences about all the bullshit he had to go through. Like, oh, we're going to do, here's 1,000 squats.
Oh, wow.
And then we'll start. Like, the story of him going through it is funny. But, we get Stu Hart, Dusty Rhodes, Joey and Mr. Wrestling 2. Mr. Wrestling 2 talking about all the, the cage match. And then Dusty, how he likes to call it, funky like a monkey, takes off the suit jacket after the comments from the assassin. He's ready to throw down with the assassin.
Yeah, this was another good promo from Dusty.
Yeah, this was just like overall, this whole trio was between this one and then the Crusher and Oxbaker, these were my favorite like segments with the legends tonight.
I didn't really think about him like in terms of favorite and not favorite, but this was a good one.
Yeah, I mean, not in like favorite or least favorite, but like the ones I enjoyed the most were these last 2.
Okay.
So we get our first of 2 world title matches. We get the NWA world title match with Arn Anderson going up against Barry Windham, and you can tell that these are both Hall of Famers for a reason.
Yeah. The basics and chaining and such have been on point throughout this whole event.
Yeah. And then you get the early quick fake out where Arn suckers Barry into a DDT, which I thought was great.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get how Arn goes off with a double axe handle and gets just molly-whopped with a fucking clothesline.
Yeah, that looked painful.
See, you can tell how that's not a flying nothing, though, right?
Yeah.
It looked like an axe handle up until the point of connection. Like, a flying nothing looks like they just hop. They just jump. There's no move in there whatsoever.
Right.
It looked like he was going for an axe handle.
That difference is a bit more subtle than most of the other ones, but I could tell.
Okay. So here's the thing. I never liked this rule. And this is still from the Bill Watts era, even though he's not there anymore. The top rope rule. If you get thrown over the top rope, it's a disqualification. Arn throws him over the top rope, but there's no disqualification. So Tony and Larry try to explain why there's no disqualification.
Right.
They're like, oh, because Arn was on the apron, and then he basically low-bridged him. He didn't throw him. It was different. It's like, he got thrown over the top rope by Arn, but there was never any concise, even when this was like Bill Watts was there was never any concise, oh, this is every single time this happens. Because it would happen all the time, but there would be some bullshit excuse that was like, oh, he used his own momentum. It wasn't the other guy's momentum. He got,
Right.
There was always a stupid excuses. So there was never any.
It never made sense.
No. And then we get through this whole thing that notice Barry Windham was busted open.
Oh, yeah. He was bleeding real bad.
Yeah. You just realize how agile it was. Arn was on the top rope and Barry Windham landed a nice drop kick. This was not a shitty looking drop kick either.
Yeah, that was a hell of a drop kick. Arn goes all the way from the top rope out to the floor.
Yeah. And Arn finally gets back. Arn actually hits later on. Arn does hit the spine buster, but Barry Windham rolls out before he can pin him.
Right.
And then Barry's like, nope, I'm out. He tries to leave, but Anderson brings him back in. And I like Tony, how Tony actually did say that These guys should have been counted out by now, but the ref just let it go. Like, this was way longer than a 10 count.
Yeah.
But we get to the end where Arn has him in the corner, tosses the ref out of the way, and he's like, "Oh no, I tossed the ref out of the way. Gee, Willikers, shucks." Turns around into a belt shot from Barry Windham, and then he pins Arn for the win.
10 minutes, 57 seconds. Another great match.
Oh, yeah, this was awesome. And then we get into the WCW World Title match, our main event, the British Bulldog versus Big Van Vader.
Oh yeah, this was a very methodical, very slow start.
But not a bad slow. We've seen bad slow.
Yeah, this was good slow.
Good slow. Because neither man was giving an inch. They were just bodying into each other. Neither man was moving. And I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
Davey Boy actually does get a little bit over on Vader at one point. Tosses him over the guardrail, and Vader almost kicks a lady in the face.
Oh, jeez, I missed that.
Yeah, she was sitting there in the front row. We learned, you and I have gone to enough wrestling events. When they start fighting your area and they start charging, you get the fuck out of the way.
Oh, yeah.
This lady didn't, and she almost caught a Vader kick to the face.
Ugh, I can't even imagine how much that would have fucked her up.
Oh, yeah. This didn't look like a young lady either.
Right.
And then here's the thing. I talked about this last week, but the spots, like, we'll get into it, especially when we get to the finish of the match. Bulldog hit a hanging vertical suplex where he was able to hold Vader there for a little bit. Awesome spot.
Awesome.
Here's the problem. You gave it away on free TV already.
Right. We talked about that last week.
Yeah, like, it's a cool spot, but if you're going to save something for, like, a cool spot where it's like, oh my god, he's so strong, he can just lift Vader up like nothing, save it for the show, the pay-per-view, and not give it away on free television.
Right.
Because it's still cool.
But there's no tension.
Yeah, I just saw a week ago. And then, once again, he clotheslined Vader over the top rope. No disqualification.
Nope.
Because, you know, we only enforce this rule when we need to or when we have to, even though it doesn't make sense, so it shouldn't be a rule to begin with.
Yeah, Davey then goes for a crucifix submission. Vader just falls back.
Yep, splats him. We get a close 2 count from a Vader bomb.
Yeah.
And then Vader actually even hit a top rope splash.
And that's still only 2.
Yeah. Like I said, this was another back and forth match. And probably my favorite part, because once again, something we didn't see before. Not only did Davey put Vader on his shoulders like an electric chair, he did it no-handed.
I didn't realize he wasn't using his hands. Holy crap.
Got up underneath there and just bodying him up on his shoulders no-handed. That was impressive.
Yeah, that was great.
Because, you know, Vader was probably about 450.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to the end, Vader goes to splash him, but Davey catches him and he hits the running power slam. Once again, awesome spot.
Yeah. We
saw it last week on TV.
Right.
We saw it for free on TV, so it's not as cool.
Still cool.
If it was to me, once again, what the fuck do I know about wrestling?
Right.
I would have either just let Vader splash Davey in the corner last week. Like, oh my god, if Davey can't beat him, who can? And then this time he catches him. Or I would have just had like Davey roll out of the way.
Okay.
I wouldn't have had him catch him until the pay-per-view.
I agree.
Because it would now, if you wouldn't have saw it on the TV last week, and then you saw it here, how much cooler would this have looked?
Would have been a lot cooler.
Yeah, it's still cool. But I literally saw it a week ago.
Right.
So we go through, and then, you know, Harley interferes, so Davey takes him out on the ringside area, and then Vader hits him with the chair for the DQ.
16 minutes, 20 seconds. Hell yes.
Yes. No. Match of the night.
Agreed.
Here's the thing. And those spots that they still did, I'm still pissed. Not pissed, like it doesn't, I'm not angry. It doesn't take away that I just saw it a week ago, but it doesn't make it lower. Here's the thing. To me, it doesn't lower the grade to where the match is at now, but if you wouldn't have done it last week, it would have made the grade higher, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, the fact I didn't see it doesn't make the match worse, but if I wouldn't have saw those moments before the match, it would have made the match better. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay. So what happens is that, you know, he's attacking Bulldog, and then Bagwell and Scorpio try to come to help, and they just straight get bodied.
Yeah.
Like nothing. They're like, Vader just swats him like a fly. So he goes to powerbomb Bulldog, but is stopped by Sting, which is really cool because we know the big rivalry that Vader and Sting have had for years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to see where this goes from.
Yeah, at that point, Vader just nopes out.
Yeah, because, like, Sting's the only one that's really had his card more than once. Like, since Vader's come into WCW. Sting's really the only person that has stopped Vader more than once.
Got it.
This is basically Superman and Doomsday. The only one, as in, like, the only one who's stopped, or anybody that's, like, like Batman and the Joker. The only one who stopped the Joker on the regular basis is Batman.
Right.
So this is kind of like, this is the only one. So, and we get an ending with Eric's out there with Magnum TA, who was former U.S. champion, who was destined to be NWA World Champion, and they just talked about this past week on Dark Side of the Ring. He had a car crash that basically ended his career and damn near paralyzed him.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, he was basically next in line to be the guy. He was basically going to be NWA's Hulk Hogan, as in, like, they were destining him to be the man in like Jim Crockett and later on WCW.
Gotcha.
Like, he was basically, he was handpicked to be like, you're the guy now.
Right.
Because you saw it, he had the look.
Oh, he absolutely did.
And, the ladies loved him. He had the, the big hairy chest, the big muscles. They called him Magnum TA because of Magnum PI, because he had the big bushy mustache.
Right.
That's where the Magnum came from, was Magnum PI.
Gotcha.
And then the TA was his initials. But yeah, and like you can see, he could talk still. Like he had the mic skills. And he was actually very good. Like, if you want to watch it, speaking of Tully Blanchard from earlier, watch their I Quit cage match from Starrcade 85. You want to talk about a brutal match where it's like, I love this match. Like, blood all over the place. An I Quit cage match for the U.S. title. Fantastic match.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and then Larry and Tony close the show with Vern Gagne, who talks a little bit about, what he thought about Slamboree, this, that, and the other. And that's where the show ends.
A- at the minimum.
I would say B+. Actually, B, because what really drags this down, honestly, there's two things. I thought Missy was not very good. She didn't drag it down a lot, but she didn't drag it down to the point of losing letter grades, but I think it would have done better without her. And then the Sting match was fucking awful.
Yeah, that was the worst match of the night, bar none.
Easily, like, not even close, because every other match was like, oh, these were great. Even the starting, like, the Legends matches were great because they didn't go over, they didn't try to do anything that they couldn't do at that point in their lives.
Right.
And like, yeah, like the Sting match was the shittiest match. And I think, there was many nominations or candidates for the match of the night, but I still think the Vader Bulldog match was my match of the night.
Agreed, 100%.
And I think, once again, my big thing is, like, they would have saved those spots for the pay-per-view and not given away a week before. Oh, I'm sorry, the day before. Because WCW Saturday Night was the day before Starrcade.
Right.
So even worse, they saved those for you gave those spots away the day before the show.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that, but once again, what do I know?
So yeah, we can armchair quarterback all day.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that's Dropkicks and Attractions for this week. Once again, we don't do the top 5 Billboard or the top 5 movies because, once again, we're still technically in the same week from the week before. We will return that next week with our top 5. And we're going to start with, it's going to be the week of May 24th, 93 with Raw. Where they're about 2 or 3 weeks out from
King of the Ring.
King of the Ring, thank you. And then we'll have WCW Saturday Night of May 29th, 1993. We'll bring the top 5s, Tubi or notTubi. And yeah, overall, this was a great show.
Agreed.
You can find the podcast on Twitter at capital D and capital A Podcast 1. For your listening and viewing pleasure, we're on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify, Kicker, Good Pods, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. You, sir?
I can be found at BigBoct, BIGBOCT, on most socials. I'm most active on Twitch and Twitter, working on that Letterboxd. And over on Reddit, I use my old name, Boct1584.
Okay. And as for me, Xander Invictus, I am on Twitch, Twitter. I just opened up on Kick, YouTube, Instagram. I'm trying to get, once again, I'm still having trouble resurrecting that dead platform, or at least my dead account. Instagram, Letterboxd. I got to add a couple movies on that. I'm Xander Invictus everywhere.
All right, that's been the Dropkicks and Attractions podcast, and we will see you next mission.
Take care, everybody.